If you have time to watch videos, go make sales. I was in the corner of my department, using my laptop for a remote meeting with Blue Company. However, since I was silently listening to the other party without speaking, Manager James seemed to have misunderstood and thought I was slacking off and watching videos. Manager James suddenly came over and slammed my laptop shut, crushing it. His sudden and violent destruction of my laptop shocked me to the core. This is going to result in big problems. Shut up, you're useless, and now you're trying to slack off on the job. The deal he abruptly disrupted was a $5 million contract that would significantly impact the company's revenue. The sudden disconnection must have startled the major client we were dealing with. At a loss for what to do, I reported the incident to President Moore. Contrary to his usual disinterest in our department's struggles, President Moore's expression became determined as he spoke. "This might work out. Good job reporting it." From there, President Moore took action, and the situation began to unfold in unexpected ways. I am David Davis, 46 years old. I work as a section chief at Moore Holdings. This company handles logistics, procuring products and distributing them to other companies and retail stores. I work in the sales department, negotiating deals with other companies and finding new clients. The previous sales manager recently retired at the age of 60. So, our department is getting a new manager. I am discussing with 2 colleagues who might get promoted. Who do you think will be the next manager? I heard rumors that it might be Mr. Taylor or Mr. Anderson. He mentioned names of employees who are section chiefs in our department. They have excellent sales records, give precise instructions, and are well respected. True, if anyone gets promoted, it would be one of them, but Mr. Jones is also a possibility. Yeah, who knows who will get the promotion? In a large company, promotions to positions above manager are not easy. Whenever a position opens, it becomes a hot topic within the company. There are a few candidates, but the firm's management has not made a decision yet. However, if any of the mentioned people become the manager, we can continue to work with peace of mind. So, we weren't too worried about who would become the manager. However, a week later, the sales department was shaken. "I'm James Brown, your new manager starting today. Nice to meet you." The new manager was none of the people we had predicted. In fact, it was James, a new employee none of us knew. He looked to be in his early 40s, quite young. His tailored suit and branded watch indicated a wealthy background. Since none of us knew him, the employees whispered among themselves. Noticing the murmurs, Manager James said, "Hey, who just complained? I'll double your workload." The harsh words silenced the department. It was an obvious abuse of the authority, but no one had the courage to challenge him. "If you're under me, don't talk back. If you don't want to be fired, you follow my orders. Got it?" It didn't seem right, but since he was our new boss, we had to obey. Even so, there were plenty of capable employees. So why was he, a new hire, chosen as manager? After the morning meeting, I talked with a colleague. Why did they make him the manager? Who knows? There are plenty of people more suitable for the position. Making a new hire, especially someone with such a bad attitude, the manager, what were the firm management thinking? It was hard to accept, but we have to as it was a done deal. Running a company involves complexities we might not understand. As regular employees, we couldn't challenge the decisions from above, even though we are not satisfied. Given that James was a new hire, we assumed he must be highly capable. However, our hopes were quickly dashed. James turned out to be shockingly incompetent. "Hey David, can you handle this?" "Wait, isn't this a manager's job?" Lateness and slacking off became the norm. Not only that, but James also dumped all his responsibilities onto us. He was new and had no idea what his role as manager entailed, or which employees belonged to which department. So, he tried to force the work onto us to resolve the situation. I thought this was inappropriate for a manager and occasionally resisted. However, James's response was always the same. What? Are you talking back to me? When I tell you to do something, you do it. That's your job as a subordinate. Understood. As an employee supporting a family with my salary, I couldn't afford to cause unnecessary trouble at work. I reluctantly nodded, telling myself that it couldn't be helped as a subordinate. But James's unreliable work continued. James, the deadline for this is today. While working in the department, I overheard a colleague complaining to James. The document is dated 2 weeks ago. Why didn't you tell us sooner? What? Are you talking back to me? It's not done because you're inefficient. It's not about efficiency. From what I heard, it seemed James simply forgot to pass on the documents, and the subordinate wasn't at fault. It was unfair to blame the subordinate for not completing the work, and they couldn't bear it anymore, so they argued back. James glared at the subordinate. You, a subordinate, are defying me. It's not about the hierarchy, but we need to address this issue going forward. You've got guts, just wait and see. An irritated James stood up with such force that his chair almost toppled over. Then he stormed out somewhere. What on earth is James thinking? A few days later, the subordinate was suddenly transferred to another department. We were all shocked, including the subordinate, who couldn't believe what was happening. The reason for the transfer was never stated explicitly. However, it served as an unwelcome lesson to us that defying James was a bad idea. From that day, James's tyrannical behavior became even more extreme. Can't you even do this? I'm sorry. A loud, rough sound echoed through the department, causing the employees to cower. When he was dissatisfied, he started kicking tables and chairs in the department. He also banged on tables and spilled drinks. He seemed to have learned that this made employees more fearful and compliant. In less than a month, several chairs were destroyed and taken to the company's dumpster. After finishing his lecture to another employee, James came over, thrusting a stack of documents at me. I told you to finish this by today, didn't I? But getting it yesterday and finishing it by today is a bit much. If we lose this contract because you made them wait, how are you going to make up for it? Yes, I'm sorry, I'll finish it quickly. His outrageous behavior was becoming unbearable. Thinking this, I once went to report to the president. The president of Moore Holdings is Mr. Charles Moore. When he heard my report about James, he looked troubled. I'm sorry, but could you endure it? Why? President Moore just shook his head silently at my words. There might be some reason behind this. But is he really going to ignore James's tyranny? At this rate, the sales department is doomed. Some employees are already considering quitting because of the mental and physical strain. Why won't President Moore take action in such an obvious crisis? Even so, if he chooses to do nothing, there's nothing I can do. Feeling trapped, I returned to my department. Despite everything, I managed to keep working. However, just barely, and the employees' dissatisfaction grew daily. How long do we have to endure this? Maybe I should quit. If we keep going like this, we'll break down. Do you think we'd win if we recorded and sued him? I heard some considering quitting due to James's tyranny. Yet, somehow, everyone was holding on. Moore Holdings is a fairly large company, offering good salaries and benefits, with stable management. That's why it's difficult to find another company with the same conditions after leaving here. Besides, all the employees have families to support. Leaving Moore Holdings would be the last resort. It was about a month after James Brown started working. There is a space in the corner of the department for meetings. That day, I brought my laptop there for a remote meeting. I was in a business negotiation with Blue Company. This deal had been progressing for 2 months and involved $5 million. I wore earphones and listened to the other party on the monitor. I listened intently to their explanation, remaining silent for about 5 minutes. Maybe that's why I looked suspicious to him. While I was focused on listening, my laptop was suddenly slammed shut and smashed. The cover and monitor shattered, cracking like a spider web. The fans made strange noises, and metal parts flew out. There was no way it could be restarted. The unexpected situation made my heart feel like it was about to leap out of my chest. What the? If you have time to watch videos, go make sales. I looked up timidly and saw Manager James standing there. He had destroyed my laptop with his fist. A light tap wouldn't cause this. He must have intentionally smashed it with the clear intention of breaking it. You thought I wouldn't notice you in the corner of the department. Useless idiot. I'm reporting this to HR. I was a bit confused by his outrageous behavior, but soon understood the situation and turned pale. Does Manager James realize what he has done? This is going to be a huge problem. Shut up. You're useless and try to slack off. So this is what you get. Go do some fieldwork and reflect on it. However, Manager James didn't seem to grasp the situation. After harshly scolding me, he left with a smug look, as if he had accomplished something significant. I had to apologize to the client immediately to prevent a disaster. But first, given the seriousness of the situation, I decided to inform President Moore. President Moore apologized and said, "I'm sorry, you've been through a lot. No, it's not about me, but this deal. No, this might be salvageable. Thank you for reporting this." When President Moore looked up, his expression was stronger than when I had consulted him before. He was aware of James's tyranny. There must have been some reason he couldn't address it until now. However, this incident seemed to have given President Moore a way to resolve it. I didn't know the details, but I decided to trust him with this. The next day, there were loud voices in the sales department. "Hey, what do you mean I'm fired?" It was, of course, Manager James yelling. What had happened was that he showed up an hour late for work and was handed a termination notice. He was raging, indiscriminately lashing out at everyone. "I'm the manager. It's ridiculous to fire me. Who made this decision? Show yourself." The employees distanced themselves, not wanting to draw his attention. I had already heard from President Moore about the circumstances leading to James's hiring. Considering this, I could understand why he was so immature. Into the chaotic department, he came. "James?" It was President Moore who appeared before Manager James. James pleaded, feeling wronged. "President Moore, please listen. There must be some mistake about me being fired. You don't seem to understand what you've done." President Moore sighed deeply. He then showed the laptop that James had smashed to pieces the other day. "I have reported this incident to your father." "What? What do you mean? Do you really think David was watching videos and slacking off at that time?" Manager James puffed out his chest and confidently said, "Of course, he was staring at his PC without saying anything. He must have been watching videos and goofing off. He was negotiating a $5 million deal with Blue Company." What? The mention of the $5 million deal and Blue Company turned Manager James's face pale. "I reported your behavior to Blue Company. I intended to apologize for the sudden disconnection, but they were the ones who apologized profusely. During the remote negotiation, your image, with your arm raised in anger, was clearly visible on their monitor. There's no denying it." Hearing President Moore's explanation, the surrounding employees looked puzzled. Ordinarily, Moore Holdings should have apologized for the abrupt end to the negotiation. However, surprisingly, it was Blue Company that ended up apologizing. There was a reason for this. "You are the son of a director who oversees audits at Blue Company." The employees who overheard this were stunned. President Moore continued, "We have a $5 million deal pending with Blue Company. So, when your father, a director there, insisted that we hire you as a manager, I couldn't refuse. For the sake of our company's business, we couldn't risk jeopardizing this deal." The employees understood why James, a new hire, was made manager, pushing aside other candidates. "I had heard some rumors about you in the industry, but honestly, I didn't expect it to be this bad. I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused to the employees." said President Moore apologetically. "That's why I spoke with Blue Company and your father. I mentioned that the $5 million deal might be cancelled, but they didn't want to scrap such an advanced negotiation. So, they agreed to let us continue the deal if we fired you." "What?" James was stunned to hear about the negotiations happening behind the scenes. He couldn't accept that discussions about his dismissal had been happening without his knowledge. He argued desperately. "That's a lie. You're just trying to fire me unfairly. I trusted you to be reasonable, President. You really don't understand anything. Did you know your father has also been dismissed?" "What?" James was speechless, clearly unaware of his father's dismissal. As it turns out, James's actions at our company, stemming from his father's recommendation, caused significant issues and chaos. This jeopardized the $5 million deal. Given that this incident nearly tore apart the friendly relationship between the two companies so far, it's no surprise his father could no longer remain an executive. Because of him, his father lost his executive position. Hearing this, Manager James must have finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. President Moore spoke to the speechless James. "It seems you've done the same at many companies, using your father's influence as an executive to secure positions at client companies repeatedly. Surely, there are other companies that have had experiences similar to Moore Holdings. The reason it wasn't widely rumored is that he was the son of an executive at Blue Company. But now, you've lost the backing of Blue Company and your father. Your past behavior won't fly anymore, do you understand?" That's... Being unable to respond, James heard President Moore continue. "So, you're fired. You don't need to work today. Just go home." "Wait, President. I was just doing my job. I was guiding my subordinates. It's unfair to fire me for that." Unable to bear being fired, James clung to President Moore. However, what he had done at this company was unacceptable. "What do you think you should have done at this company?" "As a manager, I should have properly handled my duties." "You don't even know that answer. It seems you've been very spoiled. Anyway, you don't need to work today, so just get out of here." When someone gets a job through a recommendation, they should work hard to honor the trust of the person who recommended them. But James didn't do that. He relied on his father's influence, pushed work onto others, and acted selfishly. As a result, he lost his position and caused his father to lose his job as well. "President, wait. Please listen to me, President. James tried to talk to President Moore. However, President Moore was clearly very angry with James's behavior. When he finally threatened to call security, James reluctantly left. After James left the company, President Moore and I talked in his office. "I really made a lot of troubles." "No problem. I know this wasn't the best way to handle things, but we've had a long relationship with Blue Company. When a request comes from an executive, it's hard to refuse." After James left, President Moore explained the situation to me, including the details of the deal. As just a section chief, I had no way of knowing, but the actions of executives can move millions of dollars with a single decision. Even if he was reluctant, he couldn't ignore personnel matters. That said, looking at it from another angle, President Moore hired James as the manager to ensure the smooth progress of my $5 million deal. It was a bad move. But at least I understood that he didn't hire James without considering us, which was a relief. But after this incident, I've learned my lesson. I promise that whatever the deal is, we will not take on problematic employees. If the department had fallen apart, the loss could have been much more than $5 million. Thank you for understanding. With this assurance, I felt relieved that we wouldn't have to deal with such a tyrannical boss again. I've also made some progress on the deal with Blue Company myself. President Moore added. Really? I had been anxious about how to proceed with the next negotiation with Blue Company. Hearing this from President Moore was a relief. You don't need to feel responsible for this incident. The negotiator at Blue Company knew about James. When they saw him on the monitor raising his arm and smashing the PC, They were just as confused about how to handle it. In fact, Blue Company feels more apologetic about this incident. Indeed, seeing the son of their executive causing chaos at a major client would be shocking. If I saw President Moore's son acting up at a client's office, I would probably have to apologize profusely. To include compensation, they are prepared to offer $10 million. They will pay this amount if the deal goes through. That much. The deal's amount doubled, and I widened my eyes in surprise. Despite everything, if we could get double the sales from one deal, it would be quite profitable. It's that significant. James has had behavioral issues before and moved around a lot. But this is the first time he broke an expensive laptop and nearly ruined a $5 million deal. That's why they were so frantic. President Moore looked exasperated even as he spoke. So, the compensation will be distributed as a special bonus to the employees for the trouble caused. With him out of the way, can I count on you to continue the negotiations with Blue Company? Understood. I had wondered why we had to put up with James's outrageous orders, but knowing we'd be compensated made me feel better. Those who were considering quitting would be glad they stayed. Later, I returned to the department and talked with the employees. James was intense, breaking not just chairs but even a PC. Really, it's hard to believe people like him still exist. My colleagues chuckled, remembering the turbulent days. But now, it'll be easier to work. It's hard to find a company with benefits like Moore Holdings. I'm glad I stayed. Then, the vacant manager position was finally filled. This time, a reliable employee was chosen as the manager, and we all felt relieved. With James gone, our work returned to peace. However, this peace didn't last long. That day, I left the office at the usual time. But just as I stepped out, James appeared. "Hey, David." Seeing him there was shocking. "James, why are you here?" "Because of you, I can't work anymore." "What do you mean you can't work?" "My dad told me I have to find a job on my own because he can't pull any strings for me anymore." Hearing this, I couldn't help but chuckle. It was only natural, considering James's father had also been removed from his position at Blue Company. So, James could no longer rely on his father's connections to get a job. That being said, finding a job on your own should be the norm. That useless dad of mine said he can't get me a job anymore. It's James's own fault that his father lost his executive position and authority. But it seems he doesn't understand that. That's why he continues to rant, unaware of his own situation. It's tough for his father. But it's also problematic that his parents spoiled him and kept pushing him into positions at other companies despite the trouble he caused. James aggressively approached me. "It's all your fault." "Even if you say that." I stepped back as he came closer. "Tell President Moore to hire me again." "Why should I do that?" "Because this is absolutely unfair dismissal. I never said I wanted to quit." His selfish words made me chuckle. While workers are protected by law, employees who behave violently in the workplace are not. "Go now. It's your fault I had to quit. So it's only fair. Go right now." That's a bit much. He might be desperate after being fired, but his behavior was truly outrageous. It was clear he had been spoiled at home. "James, are you sure you want to do this?" "What? This is all your fault." I decided to tell him the reality he hadn't grasped. "You might not know this, but we're proceeding with legal action against you for the threats and property damage you've caused to employees." "What? You can't do that." "It might not have been possible before you had a powerful backer. We had to endure his behavior to maintain a good relationship with Blue Company. But now, we don't have to worry about that anymore. No one is left to protect him. You might have had your father's cover before, but now you have no connection to Blue Company. It's time to settle accounts." Hearing my words, he turned pale for the first time. He finally seemed to start understanding the situation. "Are you really going to sue me?" "Yes, that's the plan." James started to panic. Do you know what will happen if you do that? Even now, he could only make childish arguments. This was likely because he had been spoiled and never had to engage in real debates. When he demanded something, both his parents and employees always complied. But the real world isn't that lenient. If we sue, everything you've done will come to light, and you'll face the appropriate consequences. You won't get away with this either. I doubt it. I've done nothing wrong. If you think you have a case against me, feel free to consult a lawyer. Realizing he couldn't win with words, James moved towards me aggressively. Just as I braced myself for another physical confrontation, a voice called out to us. "What are you doing?" It was President Moore. Maybe he saw us on his way out, or an employee informed him of our argument. James immediately turned to him. "President Moore, this guy is saying he's going to sue me. That can't be true, right?" "Are you talking about you?" "Yes. We're indeed proceeding with the lawsuit." "What?" James turned pale at President Moore's words. "Unfortunately, your numerous tyrannical actions in the company have been recorded on security cameras. Violent behavior, threats, property damage, all of these are unacceptable in society. Do you think you can still get away with all this after causing so much trouble in our company?" At that moment, James finally seemed to realize the gravity of his actions and began to regret them. He couldn't say anything in return. "Until now, your father's authority limited what we could do. But now that your father has been fired, and Blue Company has severed ties with you, there's no one to stop us from pursuing legal action for all your past misdeeds." Hearing this, James started to sweat profusely. He finally understood how powerless he was without anyone to protect him. "As if that's not enough, you trespass on our property and directly approach our employees." It seemed that James realized his actions were trespassing. And likely, all of this conversation was being recorded by security cameras. "No, it's not like that. I just wanted to talk to David for a moment." "If you wanted to talk, you should have gone through the proper channels. Instead, you trespassed on our property. We will add trespassing to the lawsuit. I will also inform your father." "Please wait. Don't tell my father." James tried to plead with President Moore. Given that James caused his father to lose his executive position, his father was probably furious. But President Moore was done listening to him. "If you stay any longer, I will call the police. Leave now." Not wanting to get into more troubles, James hurriedly left. Afterward, Moore Holdings sued James for property damage and threats. All the evidence of him smashing laptops and chairs was captured on security cameras, so James couldn't deny it. Moreover, several employees had recorded his threats, which served as solid evidence. Many employees had endured James's tyranny and were considering quitting. So, in preparation for exposing the situation after quitting, they had been gathering evidence. James ended up having to pay fines for property damage and threats. Moreover, due to his continued disgraceful behavior during the criminal trial, his parents finally disowned him. James lost his home and was left to fend for himself. He wanted to live in a luxury apartment, but without a job, he couldn't rent one. Ignoring his situation, he spent the last of his money staying in high-end hotels and eventually ended up homeless. Afterward, peace returned to Moore Holdings, and I worked calmly as a section chief. With James and his father gone, our relationship with Blue Company remained strong. The $10 million deal was progressing smoothly and would likely be finalized soon. President Moore seemed to have learned a lot from this incident. I believe this will prevent future troubles from nepotism hires. Despite everything, I like Moore Holdings. I get along well with my colleagues and have no complaints about my salary or benefits. I had considered quitting as a last resort, but I'm relieved it didn't come to that. Promotion is challenging in a large company, but I feel content here. However, even if I can't get a promotion, I'm satisfied with the current environment where I can work comfortably with trustworthy colleagues. That's why I find this job fulfilling and would like to continue contributing to Moore Holdings.